My brother slapped my daughter in front of everyone like mother. Like daughter both are useless. He laughed loudly. My dad smirked and said well she needed to learn some shame. But they didn't know the microphone was on. And then what I did next turned his life into living hell. My name is Elena Hart. And from wherever you're watching this, tell me in comments. Have you ever watched someone humiliate your child and felt like time froze, not from shock but from rage? It was the middle school talent show. A packed auditorium, teachers, parents, students. I stood in the back, arms folded, proud but quiet as my daughter Maya stepped onto the stage with her violin. She'd practiced for months every night until her fingers ached. She said, "Mom, I want Grandpa to hear me play. Maybe then, he'll finally look at me." But 2 notes and she froze. Stage fright gripped her tiny hands. She blinked out at the crowd, and saw them. My father. My brother. Front row. Dad leaned over to Mark and whispered not quietly enough. "She's just like Elena." No follow-through. Mark laughed loudly, stood up in his seat and barked. Like mother, like daughter. Both are useless. Maya dropped her bow. Gasps echoed. I tried to push through the crowd, but before I reached her, Mark marched up the steps like he owned the world. Grabbed her arm and smacked her open palm. The sound cracked through the auditorium. Maya stumbled. A teacher screamed. I reached her just as she collapsed into me, sobbing. And that's when my father stood up, clapped once, slowly, and said with a smirk, "Well, she needed to learn some shame." That moment, that exact moment, changed everything. Because what none of them realized was that the mic in Maya's dress was still live. Broadcasting across the school PA, straight into every hallway, every classroom, even the district superintendent's office. And what none of them knew was that I wasn't just Maya's mother. I owned the entire school. And I had been waiting for this moment for years. The mask slipped. The whole city heard it. And I never let them see me cry. But they were about to see me burn. I took Maya straight home that night. She cried herself to sleep with her violin still clutched to her chest. A red imprint of Mark's hand stained her cheek. I sat at the edge of her bed and stared at the girl I'd sworn I'd protect and realized I had failed. Not because I was weak, but because I'd given my family too many chances. They called it discipline. They called it family matters. But all it ever was abuse masked in tradition. Mark was the golden boy. The one who could do no wrong. And my father, he made sure everyone knew that I, the daughter, was the family's mistake. They thought I was quiet because I was scared. But I was quiet because I was building. After Maya fell asleep, I poured myself a drink, walked into my home office and opened a file I hadn't touched in 3 years. It was labeled Contingency Alpha Inside Documents, Contracts, Ownership Papers, Digital Recordings, and the names of every teacher, board member, and staff I'd quietly promoted or funded. I hadn't just invested in the school. I owned the entire campus under a holding company my family never knew existed. All legal. All signed. All mine. I built it brick by brick after Maya was born. Because I knew deep down, they'd come for her like they came for me. And when they did, I wouldn't be caught unarmed. By morning the clip from the talent show had already gone viral. Someone in the crowd had filmed it. You could hear the slap. You could hear Mark's cruel laugh. You could hear my father's smug words echoing across the speakers. But what most people didn't realize, not yet, was that the woman who stood frozen in the crowd was the one who signed their paychecks. That afternoon I scheduled a full assembly. Mandatory attendance. Staff, students, parents. They thought I was going to issue a statement. Maybe do damage control. But when I walked onto that stage I wasn't Elena the embarrassment. I was Elena Hart, CEO of Heartstone Education Trust. And they were about to learn who I'd become. One microphone at a time. The gymnasium was packed. Students buzzing. Parents whispering. Faculty looking nervous. Especially the ones who'd laughed along with my brother over the years. Mark was there too. Front row again, arms crossed, smirking like nothing could touch him. Dad sat beside him, cane in one hand, arrogance in the other. They didn't know. Not yet. I stood at the podium, calm, composed, he dressed in all black. The microphone hissed as I adjusted it. Silence settled like fog. I want to thank everyone for coming on such short notice, I said. My name is Elena Hart. I watched Mark's brow wrinkle. Dad shifted in his seat. You may know me as Maya's mother. But today I'm speaking as something else. I clicked the remote. Behind me the screen lit up, Heartstone Trust Holdings Incorporated. Then the deed. Then the faculty payroll structure. For the last 6 years, I continued, I've been the silent majority shareholder and executive funder of this institution. Mark stood halfway. What the hell is this? I didn't flinch. And for the last 6 years I've watched certain staff and certain family members undermine, ridicule and humiliate my daughter just as they once did to me. I hit play. The video. The slap. The laugh. My father's voice clear and booming. She needed to learn some shame. Parents covered their mouths. Teachers looked at their shoes. And Mark turned white. I turned to the crowd. Is this what we consider discipline? Is this what we teach our children? That cruelty is a legacy. The superintendent seated near the front stood and said, "Miss Hart, I had no idea." I raised my hand. "Don't worry. I'm not asking for apologies." I turned toward Mark and Dad. "I'm issuing consequences." Security guards stepped forward, professional, silent, ready. "Effective immediately," I said, voice steady. "Mark Hart, you are terminated from your position as Regional Athletics Coordinator. Your access is revoked. Your pay, frozen." Mark leaped to his feet. "You can't fire me. I've worked here 15 years. I smiled. "And in 15 seconds, you'll be escorted out." The guards moved. "And as for you," I said, turning to Dad, "you've been collecting a pension through a legacy advisory board you never showed up for." His eyes narrowed. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying it's gone." And just like that, the balance of power tipped. They came to a school assembly. But they didn't realize. They just walked into my courtroom. Dad didn't move at first. He just stared at me like I'd spoken in a foreign language. Like the little girl he used to yell into silence couldn't possibly speak this loudly. "You can't touch my pension," he finally growled. "It's protected. Board voted." "I am the board," I said coldly. "And I have every signed vote on file. You stopped showing up to meetings 3 years ago. You're listed as inactive and non-compliant. Which by the bylaws you helped write, disqualifies you." One of the guards handed him an envelope. Inside, the termination letter, final audit and formal pension revocation. His handshake. Mark was already being let out. But not quietly. "This is why Mom left," he barked. "Because you're a vindictive bee." I stepped closer. "You want to talk about Mom?" The whole room held its breath. "She left because she saw who you were becoming. She begged you to stop hitting me. You said, she needs a tough skin." My voice didn't rise. I just let the silence dig its claws in. "No. You're not tough. You're nothing." I turned back to the crowd. "Let this be clear. This school will never again tolerate bullying from the top. Whether it's a student, a staff member or a legacy hire." Cameras flashed. Someone was live streaming it. And I let them. I wanted the world to see. But there was one more step. That evening I called a press conference. Local networks showed up, parents, former students, alumni. Maya stood beside me. I held her hand, not as a shield but as a promise. "I've been silent for too long," I began. "I thought protecting my daughter meant keeping peace with my family. But peace without dignity is just another kind of prison." I took a breath. "Tomorrow morning both Mark Hart and Richard Hart will issue public apologies. Not to me. Not to Maya. But to every student who's ever been shamed by someone who was supposed to protect them." Dad tried to speak. Mark refused. So I leaned into the mic. "If you don't." I released the files. More gasps. Because what they didn't know, what they'd forgotten was that I'd been recording things long before the slap. Emails, calls, videos. A lifetime's worth of rot. Tucked away like ammunition. I wasn't bluffing. And they knew it now. They started this in public. And I'd make sure they finished it on live TV. They tried to beg behind closed doors. Mark texted me at 2 a.m. "Come on, sis. We're family. You really gonna destroy us over one mistake?" "One mistake?" I replayed Maya's trembling fingers clutching her violin, her tear-streaked cheeks, that red handprint that didn't fade for 3 days. He didn't get it. They never did. Dad called next. "No apology. Just, you think you'll come out clean in this? You're making a circus of your own blood." I didn't answer. I just sent him a calendar invite. Press apology. 9 a.m. Sharp Auditorium, foamed. The next morning the stage was set. Cameras, mics, journalists, students, teachers. Maya sat in the front row this time, head held high, wearing a deep blue dress her grandmother once told her was too bold. I told her she looked like royalty. Mark arrived first. Hair slicked. Wrinkled suit. Eyes darting. Dad followed slower. Cane tapping. Jaw clenched. They stood at the mic. Shoulders stiff. Faces pale. Mark leaned in first. "I want to apologize," he mumbled, "for the incident that occurred during the talent." I cleared my throat. He flinched. Then turned to the audience. I apologized to Maya Hart. I was wrong to put my hands on her. It was unacceptable and I take full responsibility. Cameras clicked. No emotion. Just performance. But I let it pass. This was about Maya, not his sincerity. Then Dad stepped up. Long silence. He struggled. This is difficult for me. I waited. I was raised in a different time. Shame was a tool. Discipline was a language we didn't question. But I see now that I was wrong. I failed my granddaughter. And my daughter. He looked directly at me. And for the first time in my life, my father looked small. I'm sorry, Elena. The room was silent. Then someone started clapping. Then another. And another. But I didn't move. I watched them step down from the stage like fallen statues. Later that night the video aired on local news. By morning it was trending nationally. Hashtag Justice for Maya. Hashtag Silent No More. Hashtag Mother Amike. My inbox flooded. Messages from women. From daughters. From strangers. Saying they saw themselves in me. But this wasn't the end. Because justice isn't complete until the rod is replaced with something pure. And I had one last surprise. Not for them. But for her. I found her that night curled on the couch, violin by her side, watching the news with wide eyes. Maya, I said softly. She turned, startled. I sat beside her, heart pounding in my throat. There's something I want to show you. From my bag I pulled out a crisp folder. Inside was a full scholarship letter, stamped and signed by the new board. To the Hart School for the Performing Arts, I read aloud. Awarded to Maya Hart for her outstanding talent, courage and resilience. Her hands trembled as she took it. You're letting me stay? I cupped her face. Baby, I don't just let you stay. I built this school so girls like you never get pushed out. You belong here. You always have. She burst into tears, and this time they were soft ones. Not from pain. From relief. I was going to quit, she whispered. I thought maybe they were right. That I wasn't good enough. I swallowed hard. They were never right, Maya. Not about you. Not about me. Their power was built on silence, and we ended that. She threw her arms around me, burying her face in my neck. Later that week I hosted a student assembly. This time not in crisis. I want to introduce you, I said, to the new director of student arts engagement. Maya stepped up, nervous, radiant. Whispers ran through the crowd. She's 12, someone muttered. I smiled. Exactly. She's 12 and already brave enough to stand against abuse. To speak when others stayed quiet. That's leadership. Applause thundered through the hall. In the months that followed, we revamped the school's entire disciplinary system. We created anonymous reporting. Monthly student forums. We brought in counselors, advocates, and even visiting artists from around the country. Maya spearheaded the Young Voices program, teaching self-expression to kids who'd once been too scared to raise their hands. And the irony? Mark's name was stripped off the teacher registry. Dad's portrait was removed from the founder's wall. In its place hung a new frame. A single image of Maya mid-performance. Bow in hand, head lifted, eyes fierce. Captions simply. Let them hear you. Sometimes I catch students standing in front of it, silent, and I wonder if they know what it cost to turn pain into power. They think I'm the one who saved her. But the truth is, she saved me first. You know what no one talks about? The loneliness of doing the right thing. After the cameras left and the hashtags faded, I was left with silence. The kind that echoes in empty hallways and tighter family circles. No more holiday invites. No more group texts. Even my mother, who stayed quiet through everything, sent a short cold message. Was that really necessary? Necessary? Maya's fingers had bruises. But it's funny. When you stop bending to shame, you start seeing clearly. We were never a family. We were a system, built on hierarchy, fear, silence. And I finally broke it. Still some nights I cried. Not from regret. But from the weight of walking alone through the fire with my daughter behind me. But Maya didn't let me stay in that darkness. One Sunday she dragged me into the sun. There's somewhere we need to go, she said. We drove across town to an old, fading building. Once a community center, now boarded up and forgotten. This is where I first learned to play, she whispered. Before they shut it down. Before anyone told me I wasn't worth hearing. I looked around, cracked windows, graffiti, weeds through concrete. He turned to me, eyes alive. Let's fix it. And just like that, I wasn't alone anymore. We made calls, held meetings, applied for permits. We poured in funds. My funds. Not school money, not family money, just mine. The renovation took 4 months, but the transformation, it was something holy. Bright walls, Soundproof practice rooms, a stage that faced the street like an open hand, and a new name carved above the entrance. The Maya Heart Center for Girls Who Won't Be Silenced. Opening day, the lines stretched around the block. Girls from every neighborhood. Mothers holding daughters' hands. Grandmothers crying behind sunglasses. I stood beside Maya as she cut the ribbon. Press cameras flashing. She leaned in close and whispered, "Do you think Grandpa and Uncle Mark are watching?" I smiled, cold and proud. I hope they are. Because legacy isn't what you're born into. It's what you build when no one believes in you. And we were just getting started. 2 months later, a letter came. No return address. Just a thick envelope, my name typed across the front. I opened it slowly. Inside, a handwritten note from Dad. "I watched the ribbon cutting on TV. You were right. I see that now. Mark still doesn't. But I do. I wish I had known how to love you better. I don't deserve a seat beside you or Maya. But I hope someday she'll forgive me anyway. I'm sorry, Elena. For everything." I read it twice. Then a third time. And I felt nothing. Not anger. Not peace. Just a quiet awareness that I no longer needed his apology to breathe freely. Because by then Maya and I had already filled every space they tried to hollow out of us. We didn't just survive. We reclaimed. And they sat in silence, stripped of their roles, their control, their audience. Mark applied for another teaching job in a neighboring county. Didn't get it. The board had already seen the footage. No one wanted his kind of discipline near children again. Dad's pension froze. A direct result of misuse of school funds tied to outdated disciplinary committees. Legal clean permanent. The same week the check stopped, Maya's story aired on a national morning show. They asked her what it felt like to be the girl who stood up. She smiled into the camera, chin high. "I didn't stand up," she said. "I just stopped sitting down for people who never deserved my silence." I wept that morning. Quiet, shaking tears. Not from sadness, but because that little girl they dismissed, struck in humiliated, now carried fire in her voice, and they would hear it every time she spoke. We built more centers. 3 to be exact. All under her name. I stepped back eventually. Let her lead. And when the next generation of girls walked through those doors, broken, brilliant, unseen, Maya met them with open arms and said, "I know what it feels like. You're safe now." Because revenge isn't always fire and fury. Sometimes it's creating the world they tried to deny you. Sometimes it's watching them sit in the ashes while you build palaces from everything they thought would bury you.